Iqbal Masih would have turned 42 this year. He might have been a lawyer, fighting in the courts of Pakistan to free others like himself. But that future was stolen 20 years ago. On a dark April night in 1995, the village of Muridke near Lahore, Iqbal was gunned down when he was just 12 years old. His crime? Daring to speak out against child labor, a life that he himself had lived, but managed to break those shackles and become a voice for the voiceless. Masih's story is steeped in tragedy. Not long after he was born, his father, Saif Masih, walked out, leaving the family to fend for themselves. His mother, Inayat, took work as a house cleaner, scraping together whatever little she could. But her wages were never enough to feed all her children. Desperation closed in, and with it came the price of poverty. For Iqbal, everything changed when he turned 4 years old. In 1986, the family faced a familiar crisis, an older brother's wedding. With no savings and no support, they turned to the only option available to the poor, a local employer who offered small loans, but at a cruel price. The cost? A child. For barely 600 rupees, that translate to $12, Iqbal was handed over to a carpet factory owner. The deal was simple. Until the debt was repaid, the boy would weave rugs. No consent, no understanding. Iqbal Masih, just 4 years old, was sold into slavery. Bonded labor under the Peshgi system of loans meant that Iqbal Masih was no longer a child. He was collateral. As their financial struggles deepened, the loan only grew, fed further by false charges, inflated interest, and lies. By the age of 10, Iqbal's original debt of 600 had exploded into 13,000 Pakistani rupees, roughly $260, a fortune that his family could never hope to repay. Iqbal, like dozens of other bonded children, was forced to squat on wooden benches for hours at a stretch, fingers bloodied, back bent, trying endless knots into intricate carpets destined for faraway homes. Iqbal worked 6 days a week, at least 14 hours a day. If the children talked back, ran away, or were homesick, or even physically sick, they were punished by their so-called owners. Beaten, chained to their loom, isolated in dark closets, and even hung upside down. Iqbal Masih was like any other child, curious, bright, and full of dreams. He longed for school. He longed for freedom, for a life beyond the loom. One day he escaped and ran to the nearest police station. He told the police everything, the beatings, the chains, the endless work. But justice was a currency that his captors could easily afford. For a small bribe, the police handed him back to the very man who enslaved him. And then one day, Masih learnt that the Supreme Court of Pakistan had banned child labor and that the government had in fact outlawed the Peshgi system of loans. For him, hope resurfaced and Iqbal escaped again. The child then joined the Bonded Labor Liberation Front. His story reached the ears of Ehsan Ullah Khan, then chairman of BLLF, who directed his efforts towards freeing Masih from bondage and mercifully even succeeded. Once free, Iqbal was sent to a BLLF school in Lahore, where Iqbal studied very hard, finishing 4 years of work in just 2. He became involved in demonstrations and meetings that fought against bonded child labor. Iqbal Masih had made it his mission to raise awareness about child slavery. His 6 years as a bonded child had affected him physically as well as mentally. Iqbal was an extremely small child, about half the size he should have been at his age. He also suffered from kidney problems, a curved spine, bronchial infections, and arthritis. His body had stopped growing, which doctors described as psychological dwarfism. Iqbal lost his childhood, but not his spirit. When Iqbal traveled to the US to receive the Reebok Human Rights Award, the world saw a brave activist. But behind the speeches and applause was still a boy, burdened with a dark childhood. As Iqbal Masih's voice grew louder, so did the threats against him. His courage rattled powerful men profiting from child slavery. The death threats became frequent. On Easter Sunday, on April 16, 1995, he spent the day with his family, sharing food, laughter, and a brief return to normalcy. Later, with two cousins, he set off on a bike to bring dinner to his uncle in the fields. But they never made it. Somewhere along the path, a gunman was waiting. Iqbal was killed instantly. One cousin was wounded, but the other remained unharmed. The assassin vanished from the site. Who pulled the trigger and why officially remains unanswered. But those who knew what Iqbal stood for never doubted the message behind the bullet. On April 17, 1995, Iqbal was buried. In 2000, he was posthumously awarded World's Children's Prize for the Rights of the Child. The government of Pakistan conferred him Tamga-e-Shujaat in 2022, 27 years after his death. In June this year, Pakistan's Punjab state government approved a child protection policy to address child labor, trafficking, early marriage, malnutrition, and the impact of armed conflict on children. Despite existing laws, children in Pakistan continue to face exploitative labor, chronic malnutrition, and lack of education. Even today, there are many Iqbal Masihs present in Pakistan, waiting to be freed.